Hey everybody, how are we doing? I'm doing okay. It's been a really weird day. It's been gloomy outside. I've had the day off. I've been trying to keep busy with some stuff. I was working on some music today, but I've just felt a little off, and I knew I was gonna stream a little bit earlier today, get our newest episode of the greatest Pokemon of all time ranking up. So I just decided to start early. I'm just here. I'm here. I'm doing my thing. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Well, my wife just called me. I'm gonna call her back in 1 second. Let's see. Oh, she's just saying she's coming home. Great. Amazing. So I'll be streaming when she gets here. Lovely. Sorry about that. Let's get into our recap. That seems a little aggressive for me. Okay. Let's get into our recap. So last time we covered Pokemon number 69, a very nice Pokemon, to number 60. So there we had, at 69, we had Slowpoke. At 68, we had Cubone. At 67, we had Mimikyu. At 66, we had Decidueye. At 65, we had Salamence. At 64, we had the almighty Onix. At 63, we had Raichu. At 62, we had Raikou. At 61, we had Togepi, who made a case in the moment that it should be higher. And at 60, we had Zekrom. We are going to be covering number 59 to 50 today. We are going to get into the top 50, which is where the top 50 is where we're really going to get to see like the true elite Pokemon in history. So without further ado, let's head on to number 59. I will say we're listening to Johto Legends by Braxton Burks. I love this album. We've listened to it a ton of our streams of this. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Any Pokemon game is fair game. So if you have not played any of them, just be warned, there will be spoilers. So I finally remembered to do that at the beginning. Let's get into it. Here at number 59, we have Reshiram. Sorry, I was kind of anticlimactic. At 60, we had Zekrom, and at 59, we have Reshiram. One thing that really stands out to me is that you see Zekrom has the blue tints, kind of like Zekrom has just little spots of blue on its black body. Reshiram has little bits of red on its white body. You can kind of see like underneath where it goes toward its tail. But another special detail I enjoy is that their eyes are actually the opposite of the accent color. So Zekrom has the blue accent color, but Reshiram has the blue eye, and then it's the opposite for Zekrom. Reshiram has the red accent color, and Zekrom has the red eye. So they're very kind of like opposites of each other. Again, that kind of yin and yang thing. Really cool. But Reshiram and Zekrom have very similar resumes, like we see featured Pokemon of N. It was a cover star twice for Black and White 2. Also has that fusion form, also a legendary Pokemon. We have the iconic lore where they were both a part of Kyurem. We won't see Kyurem on this list. Spoiler alert. I kind of baked Kyurem's lore in with Reshiram and Zekrom, and I think they are much more iconic Pokemon in my opinion. But they all have the iconic lore of being a part of those two brothers, the Truth and Ideal brothers, and splitting apart from the original dragon, with Kyurem being like the husk. So that's obviously really cool. But there were two things that made me decide to give Reshiram just the edge. I could have had them share a slot, like I've done before. But, one, I prefer Reshiram's design a lot more. I think it's a lot more elegant than Zekrom. Zekrom seems kind of like chunky and weird to me. I think Reshiram it feels more like an animal in a way. Even though people joke that it's kind of like a dragon chicken. And I do agree, but it's in like the coolest way possible. I mean, chickens are kind of related to T-Rexes, I guess. Anyway, and the other thing that really kind of gave Reshiram the edge was this card right here. This Reshiram and Charizard's GX. This was in Unbroken Bonds. This card is so sick. Now, Zekrom is featured with Pikachu in Team Up, which is no slouch, but this artwork in particular is a favorite of mine, and the Rainbow Reshiram Charizard was much more of a chase card than the Zekrom and Pikachu. The Reshiram Charizard made more of an impact on the TCG, I would argue, than the Zekrom Pikachu. So, the design elements of Reshiram, and gosh, this card. I love this card. Oh my gosh, I love this card. I think it's so cool how they're both just firing off attacks right next to each other. So sick. Of course, we have some other cool featured cards here. We have this all-white card from the Black and White era. Zekrom has a similar all-black card. Now, while Zekrom had that Trainer Gallery card riding on... Well, N had the Trainer Gallery card riding on Zekrom. We have N's Reshiram that was featured in a new set. And I think this artwork is also super cool. I think they're both pretty equal, honestly. But both very awesome. And then, of course, we have the Zekrom tag team. I believe I showed this when we talked about Zekrom. So you put all those things together, and that's why I decided to put Reshiram ahead of Zekrom, even though they have very similar vibes. Now, Reshiram has be White Flare, another kind of like chromatic card that's going to be coming out in this White Flare set. It's not this one right here from Black and White. I will probably have to Google it. Oh yeah, let's do that. Yes, right here. So there was a new chromatic Zekrom card here. We have that with Reshiram as well. Super, super cool. Love Reshiram. This Pokemon in particular has really grown on me. I have been a noted critic of the Black and White designs, but love Reshiram. Let's move on to number 58. Ooh, I remember looking at some of the roster here. I remember I really liked some of them. Let's see. Typhlosion, baby. We all know that I love Typhlosion. We all know that... Load it. There we go. I love this regional form so much. I love this key art here. A lot of people weren't really a fan of kind of like the chilled out, like almost stoner look of Typhlosion, but those purpley ghostly flames are so cool. And I love the Legends Arceus game so much. Obviously, we chose Typhlosion as our starter for our playthrough, or Cyndaquil, I guess, but I love the regional Typhlosion in those games. But Typhlosion is a starter Pokemon 3 times. Now, we've had a few of those already. Technically, Chikorita would be one, Cyndaquil as well. Typhlosion gets to be a starter in Gen 2, Gen 4, and of course Legends Arceus, like we've talked about. Now, I wrote here, canonical starter of Ethan. Certainly in Pokemon Chronicles. So, I believe it's Pokemon Chronicles. There is an episode where the player character, the boy player character from Gen 2 known as Ethan, he has an encounter with Raikou, and his starter Pokemon in that game, in that episode rather, is Typhlosion. So I kind of think of Typhlosion as the canonical starter for the trainer from Gold, Silver, and Crystal, which I think is really cool. Oh, yeah, and that there is more evidence to that by this brand spanking new illustration rare card that's in Destin Rivals. This thing is sick. This is Ethan's Typhlosion. I love it so much. And, you know, we don't mention Quilava. I think Quilava is a great design. But Cyndaquil and Typhlosion kind of absorbed that on our list. Gosh, I love this card. It is so cool. It was featured in the new Pokemon Snap in the Volcano area, if you remember. Very, very cool. Typhlosion being the Volcano Pokemon. I would say, I think I would argue that it is the most popular Pokemon from Generation 2. Most popular starter from Generation 2. You can argue with me on that if you'd like, but that is what I would argue regarding Typhlosion. A few other things. It made an infamous jump to 3D, and I think that's why people didn't really like Hisuian Typhlosion as much at first, because when Typhlosion was first put in 3D, it just looked like a badger. It didn't have its flames out when you would send it out into battle. It would only have its flames out when it would attack. But then they remedied that in Legends Arceus by having those flames out at all times. Looks way, way better. Way super cool. I did want to point that out, though. That was a big point for the fandom. But one of Typhlosion's biggest resume points is right here. This Typhlosion card is one of the iconic cards of the hobby, certainly one of the iconic vintage cards. It rivals the OG Charizard. You could say nothing does, which you would be right. But this Typhlosion here, the Typhlosion 17, is very, very sought after from the Neo Genesis set. There is also another Typhlosion card from Neo Genesis because those starters each got 2 holos in Neo Genesis. Here, we just kind of have the more plain, like Sugimori art with a regular background. But here we have that special art. Gosh, I love this one so much. It's so, so cool. And I would love to have this in my collection one day, but it is very expensive, kiddos. But with that, Typhlosion's resume isn't huge, but I think it has had a big impact specifically for lovers of Generation 2 like myself. And it's had some great moments in the TCG. And let's see, I'm sorry. Gosh. Give me 1 second. My wife is just texting me. All right. Great. So there's Typhlosion at number 58, one of my favorite Pokemon ever. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think I can argue its placement here in the top 60. All right, let's move on to number 57. Here we have Tyranitar. Oh, another beautiful Gen 2 Pokemon that starts with TY that I love so very much. I love Tyranitar. This thing is just the Godzilla Pokemon. It's a big green kaiju monster. It's super, super sick. The only bad thing about it was that you really couldn't use it in its original generation. In Gen 2, Larvitar was only available in Mount Silver, which was at the very end of the game. So I do say here that Tyranitar has iconic rarity, and that it does. But in its original generation, like a lot of Gen 2 Pokemon, they made Tyranitar a little bit too rare. I always think that in Gen 2, either Karen or Lance should use a Tyranitar. I think Lance having a Tyranitar would be so freaking cool, especially if that was like his new ace, because you would, if it was your first time playing Gen 2, you would have no idea what that thing is, and you would have had no opportunity to obtain it. Anyway, so talk about that iconic rarity with Tyranitar. Also gets a couple of new forms here. We have this Mega Evolution for Tyranitar. I don't really like it that much, but hey, you know, it's a Mega Evolution. Let's see. And then Tyranitar also got this Paradox form. This Paradox form is very interesting. It is an electric type now, and this could be at least partially based on something that you experience in the Generation 5 games, where you have an encounter with like a mechanical Tyranitar, and I think they may have partially based this Pokemon Iron Thorns on that. I think, maybe. Once we get to Generation 5, you'll see. Very cool. I mean, it's super sick. I love the kind of like green, kind of like plasma goo that's like inside of it. You kind of like all those Future Paradox Pokemon, you kind of like see their blood in there. I mean, iconic design. I talk about it a little bit. It is just Godzilla. It's super, super sick, which is, of course, an iconic creation of Japan, much like Pokemon. It is a pseudo-legendary. It was the second pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Again, I think they made it a bit too rare. But we'll get into its TCG here. We got some really awesome, iconic cards. We have this Neo Discovery Holo. This would be the rookie card of Tyranitar, I believe. I really, really love this card. I think it's super, super cool. Again, I say it every time on these Neo cards that are dark or steel type. I love the treatment they gave those cards. They just look so good. So we have that in Neo Discovery. We have the Shining Tyranitar here. Oh yeah, from Neo Destiny. One of a few Pokemon to get the Shining treatment. Very, very, very cool. That's kind of one of the more prestigious resume points in terms of the TCG. And then, of course, I wanted to point out this Aquapolis Holo. Ooh, yeah, he's like walking amongst the ferns. It's like he's a dinosaur. Oh, man. A dinosaur in the darkness. Love this card of Tyranitar. Excuse me. I think it's raining. And then it's also featured in Pokemon Forever. If you're familiar with that movie, that is the one featuring Celebi. And there is an evil trainer that turns his Tyranitar into a Shadow Tyranitar, and it starts firing off evil hyper beams. But I always remember that feature in Pokemon Forever. I always remember the way he said, "Come on out, Tyranitar!" Because he's evil, so he's got a gravelly, evil voice. But Tyranitar is not a Pokemon that has the benefit of a lot of features in the game in terms of NPC usage and whatnot, but it is a Pokemon that has stood the test of time, gotten a lot of great forms, a lot of good notoriety from Game Freak, and I think is a favorite of fans, and that's why we see it here, just outside the top 50. Let's move along. At number 56, we have Crobat. Yes, Crobat is probably one of the best cross-gen evolutions that they have ever created. It's certainly, I think, one that OG Pokemon fans like myself will think of first, like Crobat and Steelix, I think, are kind of like the OG ones. You might think of some of the Gen 4 Pokemon. But anyway, Crobat's great. Love to see it. It was a featured Pokemon of Brock in the anime. Because Brock catches a Zubat way at Mount Moon when he's first introduced in the anime, but then way later on, he eventually evolves it into Crobat, which I think is very cool, especially considering Brock is a Pokemon breeder, and Crobat evolves via friendship, so that's a nice little bit of character development for Brock. I like that quite a bit. Crobat does get some better NPC representation. We see it as Koga's Elite Four Ace in both Gen 2 and Gen 4, and I actually don't have it here, but Crobat is featured on Janine's team as well. I am almost positive. If not, he should be. Maybe that's why I don't have it written down. Anyway. Crobat does also get a feature on your rival's team in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. It's not until way later, until he challenges you at the Pokemon League, but that, again, is another good bit of character development for our rival in Johto, because he is famously mean to his Pokemon, and he's a complete jerk. He's a thief and a ruffian, but he later learns to love his Pokemon, and of course Crobat evolves via friendship, so we love to see that. It is a member of rival Gladiion's team in Sun and Moon. Again, Sun and Moon games, I submit to you, are the most underrated Pokemon games. I think they are great. Gladion is a wonderful character as well. We have that iconic design, those 4 wings. You love the 4 wings. I mean, I love the big mouth Golbat. I think Golbat is also really cool. Sue me. But I think most people would agree Crobat is a nice evolution of its design. It made Zubat desirable because Zubat was a Pokemon that just was very annoying, always in caves, and it only evolved into Golbat. Wasn't that good. But if you evolved it all the way to Crobat, it got good. It was super fast, it was super strong, and it could learn Fly. Golbat could not learn Fly originally, which was very dumb because we were still bound by HMs back in the old days. But having another Pokemon that can learn Fly, especially a cool one, was super great. Crobat, evil team staple. You see it on Archie's team, you see it on Maxie's team, you see it on Cyrus's team. Zubat, Crobat, they're always popping up. I mean, Zubat got a spot on this list as well, so that tells you a lot. It's kind of like the little evolution line that could, in terms of this list, but I think most people would agree that Crobat is among the most popular Pokemon of all time. And let's get into some TCG rep here. We have this holographic card from Neo Destiny. Oh yeah, I had a Japanese version of this card when I was a young boy, and it just really captured my imagination. We got that early 2000s CG. We love to see it. Love that Dark Crobat card. We have the Crystal type holo. This was in Skyridge, it looks like. But there was also, I mean, this is very cool and it's super rare, valuable card. But there was also another holographic Crobat. This being in Skyridge as well. Look at that. Ooh, they're all hanging upside down. Oh, that is so sick. The e-reader holos are just so cool, man. I mean, if you remember, that's what this era is where that Tyranitar card came from Aquapolis. Love to see that Crobat card. So cool. So reading back its resume here, Crobat has a really nice resume. It could be higher on this list if I were to make this list again, because not only is it popular in the anime, not only is it popular as an NPC featured Pokemon very often throughout Pokemon's history, it is also a true fan staple, Crobat. So very deserving to be this high on this list, perhaps even higher. At number 56 we have Crobat. But let's move along to number 55. Here we have Blaziken. Blaziken does get the nod over Crobat by virtue of being a starter. Torchic, of course, you can have as a starter twice in Generation 3 and its remake in Generation 6. Now, it was a featured Pokemon of May in the anime and Harrison. Now, I don't know much about the character Harrison from the anime, but I do know that he does use a Blaziken. And I remember May always having her Torchic and Combuskin and whatnot. Again, that era of the anime is a bit out of my depth, a little bit, but I know it was a big feature there. Blaziken gets a Mega Evolution. And now, this Mega Evolution of Blaziken, I like this a lot. It doesn't necessarily look stronger than OG Blaziken, but they do give it a new niche because it has the ability Speed Boost, and you can tell this is like the sleeker, speedier version of Blaziken, and I think that is a cool route to go with Mega Evolution, and it's not just Blaziken but spikier, They actually did make a new design, which I do appreciate. Pretty cool. And that was one of the key Mega Evolutions of Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, although I believe it was introduced before those games came out. Let's see. Ooh, yes. We have this iconic illustration rare. Now, Blaziken has had some nice features in the TCG, but this one from, I believe, Chilling Reign was a super huge card. Blaziken hitting that rapid strike above the dojo here. This is a very expensive card. As a matter of fact, I want to do just a little price check on the Blaziken VMAX. We also have this other super sick one. This was just a Trainer Gallery card for Silver Tempest, so it's not as expensive, but also super awesome. And there you see May. There you see our girl. But, oh yes, the Blaziken VMAX alt art here, about $300. That one's Chinese. But yeah, close to $300 or more. So super expensive, but very, very cool. Now, one cool thing for Blaziken that some people might not know. Let's look this up. Now here, we have, yes, I like this picture. We have this beta design for Blaziken, which is really, really cool, and it has become iconic because it really is like a mixture of Blaziken and Latias and Latios. So it kind of goes to show you that perhaps Blaziken's original design was fused with Latias and Latios, and then they were kind of separated as separate Pokemon later. But that's really, really cool. I love those little dives into Pokemon history. I don't love like leaks or like data breaches or anything. I don't know how this beta design kind of came into the world, but I am happy to have this knowledge. I think this is really cool and a cool piece of Pokemon history. So that is another point for Blaziken there. Featured in Pokken Tournament. Love to see that. We've seen that pop up plenty of times on our list. I believe it's one of the first Pokemon you can encounter in the game. You don't have to unlock it, at least to my knowledge. Blaziken, of course. Blaziken being the OG firefighting type. Even you've got Blaziken, and then, of course, followed Infernape and Envor. I think Blaziken is the superior Pokemon of those three. Even Incineroar is kind of, spiritually firefighting, and Incineroar did get the nod in Smash Bros, so that is a bit of a bigger achievement. But Blaziken, I think, better overall. And then finally, I got a nice signature move of Blaze Kick. I think is really, really cool. All three of those starters from Generation 3 got signature moves. Swampert, of course, got Muddy Water, and Sceptile got Leaf Blade. But that was the first set of starters to receive signature moves. That is something that they do regularly now, something that I don't love. But that's something that they always seem to do now with starter Pokemon. Anyway, at number 55, we have the very deserving Blaziken, a starter, iconic Pokemon. Love to see it here. At number 54, we have Flareon, another fire Pokemon. This is the first evolution of what I consider to be the big five evolutions. Those three OG evolutions and then the two from Johto, I think, are kind of the true icons of the family. I mean, we love Leafeon, we love Glaceon, and we love Sylveon, but I don't think they quite have the mystique that those Pokemon do. And here we have Flareon at number 54. It's one of the iconic original Eevee trio. That counts a ton. It is an evolution at all. Being connected to Eevee is going to be a big point in your resume. I'll go ahead and talk about its TCG first. I usually talk about that second, but we have this iconic holo from Jungle. This is one of those first WotC sets. Love to see this here, that original holofoil. It's beautiful. Gosh, I really love that art. Let's see. We also have a Gold Star card, another huge feather in the cap in terms of TCG. It's much like a Shining, much like a base set holo. One of the big resume points you can have in terms of the TCG, a Gold Star card. A lot of the evolutions would receive one of these. And then the iconic modern promos. I love this promo card that came in a special box. Jolteon and Vaporeon have some as well. This, if it tells you anything, this awesome card is my least favorite of the three. And one of the reasons that Flareon is the first of the original evolutions that we see on this list. And this card still rips. Look, you got the tea, the little notebook, the yarn. It's very cozy. It's by the fire. The mantelpiece. Oh my gosh. So great. But the other two, I think, are better. So that's something to look forward to. But now we'll kind of get into some of Flareon's features. It was featured on Elite Four Flint's team. We experienced that in Platinum. It was, of course, not featured on Flint's team in Diamond and Pearl, famously. But it does still get the feature in Platinum. The Kimono Girls and the Sages of the Tin Tower. That just says Kimono Girls. Kimon and Pumbaa. Just funny. So the Kimono Girls are trainers that you encounter in Generations 2 and 4. They each have their evolution. Flareon, of course, is featured. And the Sages guard the tower where you can encounter Suicune/Ho-Oh. So it is a possible team member for How. I say Champion How. I guess I should say Challenger How. Because in the OG Sun and Moon games, you battle Professor Kukui for that champion battle, but in Ultra Sun and Moon, it is your rival How. Flareon can be featured there. Flareon can also be featured on Blue's champion team in Pokemon Yellow only if you meet the criteria for that to happen. It's kind of complicated. It's based on which battles against your rival you lose or win, but your rival can have Jolteon, Vaporeon, or Flareon. I think Flareon is really great. Also, on Team Star Boss Penny's team. So Flareon really has a sneaky great resume in terms of NPC participation, as well as its inclusion as an evolution and fan favorite. Now, again, I have Flareon in last place in terms of the OG evolutions, and I think a lot of that has to do with its design. I think the designs of the other evolutions are stronger. Not to say I dislike it, but I think they're stronger. It kind of has a weird niche in the game as like a physical attacking fire type, especially early on before those things were split. But Flareon cannot be denied. Its resume is still so great, and although I don't think it's as strong as some of its counterparts in terms of design, it is still wonderful, wonderfully cute. There's a reason that evolutions are as popular as they are. So at number 54, we have Flareon. Happy to see it here. Let's move on. After I get a drink of water. These streams, I really need to wet my whistle. I do a whole lot of talking. All right. At number 53. Ooh. National Park. Oh, I love National Park. All right. Number 53. It's Latias and Latios. We talked about them a little bit here with Blaziken's beta design, or you could argue that it is their beta design. Who knows? Latias and Latios, I decided to let them share a slot here at number 53. They, our first point here, they do get a Mega Evolution, which is a big vote of confidence from Game Freak. Even though I don't really love the design of their Mega Evolution, they do actually share the same design. So if you are Mega Evolving your Latias or Latios, they will both look like this. The purple, although I will say, I don't love that they share a design, but it is kind of nice that it is purple because that is kind of the meld of red and blue, the two colors of Latias and Latios like we see here. I was always more of a fan of Latios because it was blue and kind of more boyish looking and kind of more edgy looking. Latias looks a lot more friendly. I might identify more with Latias today. But both are very cool. I like them a lot. They're really interesting. They're dragon psychic Pokemon, kind of based on like Jets a little bit. which is super cool. They were the stars of the film Pokemon Heroes. I believe that was the 5th Pokemon movie. And that's kind of when I started to fall off with the Pokemon movies. Man, and that was still in the era when the animation was just, chef's kiss, so gorgeous. They were an old school event Pokemon. You needed an item called the Eon Ticket. Yes, because you had to go to a special island to find Latias or Latios. And of course, we encountered this in our Emerald playthrough. You could find them roaming around in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald after you become the champion. In Emerald, they ask, like, there's like a broadcast on the TV, and it's just like, there's been reports of a colored Pokemon. So then your mom asks, what color did it say? And you kind of get to choose what color they said. And that's the member of the Eon duo here that you will encounter in your games. Now, I talked about the Mega Evolution not being my favorite, but Latias and Latios are key for this soaring feature in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It's really, really cool. Once you obtain Latias or Latios, you can fly around them, like kind of like, not like fly like you would in the original Pokemon games, but like free fly, like around a huge map of the region. It's very, very cool, and was a key point in helping you retrieve legendaries in the post game of those games. Very, very neat. Something that I think would be interesting to reinstitute in a Pokemon game in some way, which I guess they did with Scarlet and Violet. Very cool. I guess I should just pay attention. Koraidon and Miraidon can do that. So, an infamous gift Pokemon. I keep talking about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Around the mid-game, after you defeat Norman, your father, when you encounter Steven in the OG Generation 3 games, he'll just kind of hop across the ledge before you go up to Fortree City, and he'll just talk to you and say, hey, what's up, dude? But in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, he gives you a Latias or Latios, which is just insane. And it can Mega Evolve. It's insanely powerful. It's too powerful. It's a kind of a lot like I talk about Rayquaza in Emerald, how it's just too strong when you get it, can kind of break the game. They do the same thing with Mega Lucario in X and Y. It can just kind of break the game, but you don't have to use it, so I guess I shouldn't complain too much. You can always just not use it. That's always an option. They don't make you use it, even though they give it to you. A really cool Smash Bros. Pokeball. I always think about Latias and Latios because when you get that rare spawn of them out of the Smash Bros. Pokeball, they'll like glow for a little bit and then just zip across the field and they'll just hit your opponents. Really like that one. Wanted to shout that out. They are an original Battle Frontier staple. You all know I love the OG Battle Frontier in Emerald. And in our playthrough, I have used a Latios before for the Battle Frontier. And I kind of talked about like what I did when I was hunting it. You can kind of like get a secret base and like just farm this one little patch of grass. Anyway, in our playthrough, basically, we used Starmie instead of Latios. Latios is great because it can learn a lot of coverage moves. It can learn Psychic, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Surf. I think that's literally what I taught mine. And that's the same thing we taught to our Starmie as well. So that's super cool. But the last thing with these two, when it comes to Latias and Latios, this new Tag Team GX card, I shouldn't say new, it's from the Sun and Moon era. But this Tag Team GX card right here has become absolutely iconic. It is a super, super rare card now. It is a super, super expensive card now. And I mean, for good reason, it's absolutely gorgeous. It just really captures the imagination. Love the sunset. Love the heart. It's so cute. They're companions. It's so, so great. And I really, really wish I would have thought to buy one of these when they were cheap back in the day. But alas, they are cheap no longer, children. No longer. But this thing is super cool. I mean, this is one of the iconic cards in the modern hobby. Like this and the Moon Umbreon, I would argue, are maybe the two iconic cards of the modern Pokemon hobby. So there you have it. That's Latias and Latios. A lot of cool stuff. There are Pokemon that I kind of forget about, but they have a lot of great and interesting features, as well as that iconic TCG presence. So let's keep going. Let's go now to number 52. Here we see Nidoking. Oh, you love an OG here. Nidoking is so great. I mean, look at that OG kaiju design. We've talked about it with Rhydon. We've talked about it with Kangaskhan. And Nidoking, I think, does that design philosophy the best out of all of those Pokemon. We've talked about Nidoqueen as well. I think Nidoking's is the coolest of that kind of genre of early Pokemon. So, it's a featured Pokemon of Gary in the anime. In the OG Pokemon anime, I always remember Gary having a Nidoking and an Arcanine. Those were kind of like his big two that he would always brag about, even though he brags about catching every Pokemon, because we know Gary, he's just insufferable. But it was also one of the original gender difference Pokemon. Now, there aren't that many now, but Nidoking and Nidoqueen were obviously extremely different. Their base forms are literally called Nidoran male and Nidoran female, and they evolve into different Pokemon. But it was the OG gender difference Pokemon, Nidoking and Nidoqueen, of course. Oh yeah, it is a speed run staple of Generation 1, and I think that this is really interesting point for Nidoking, because you can get Nidoran very early in the game. You can get Nidoking very early in the game, because once it evolves into Nidorino at level 16, all you gotta do is use one of those Moonstones that you pick up in Mount Moon, and boom, you got a Nidoking for most of the game, and it's super strong. And I think that's really cool for Nidoking, that it is one of the most widely used strategies, or at least it was, for speed running Generation 1. I think that's a really cool point in its favor. Talked about its powerful, iconic design. I think it kind of does the kaiju thing the best out of the Pokemon that we have discussed thus far. I think if you talked to the fandom, they would agree with me. Now, in terms of its NPC features, we actually don't see Nidoking a whole lot. It does get featured on Giovanni's team, iconically, in Generation 1 and in Generation 3. So that's going to be really great. Giovanni, oh yeah, also in Let's Go. Yes. So we get to see it then as well. I'm just like, I put ×3. What was the third one? But Nidoking's got some great TCG representation as well. We see the base set holo right here. Oh yeah. Gosh, on those first edition print cards, it's just they look a little darker. I just love the way they look. It's so freaking cool. That Sugimori, baby, that is gorgeous. Having a base set holo is huge. We also see this great Gym Challenge holo, and we see, of course, Giovanni's Nidoking. He's featured a lot in the games with Giovanni. Love to see that. Love Giovanni's little headshot there in the bottom. We have the Crystal Nidoking. This was in Aquapolis. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the Crystal-type Pokemon, we talked about this with Crobat earlier. They were special rare cards that were in the e-reader sets, and those sets are already insanely rare and special as it is, so super sick. Wow, you have lightning and fighting energies on that Rolling Thunder. A lot of different energies going on here on Crystal-type Nidoking. But saw a new Nidoking that just came out in Destin Rivals is Team Rocket's Nidoking. I wanted to point this one out because this artwork is super duper cool. Again, featured with our boy Giovanni. And of course, it is too expensive for me to buy, which is very annoying. But it's still super cool using that Earthquake. Oh gosh, I love this. This is so great. But Nidoking. This Nidoking is one of those Pokemon that if you're an OG, you use this boy in a playthrough. Definitely. And it kind of has that Luxray Staraptor effect where it's so iconic because everybody used it at some point. But I think it also has some really nice extra points going for it. It's just really iconic Gen 1 Pokemon. And I love to see it here at number 52 on our list. Oh, hold on. It actually did have another great card in 151 right here. Illustration rare. This one's much cheaper. So if you're a Nidoking collector, go for the 151 illustration rare instead of Team Rocket's Nidoking. You'll save $130. All right, let's move on. Number 51, we have Volcarona. Yes. Introduced in Generation 5, Volcarona is very, very cool. When I first think of Volcarona, I think of its iconic static encounter in Generation 5 out in the desert, out in the castle underneath the desert. So sick. I will have to show you that. I'll have to show that to you guys someday. I talk about that iconic static encounter. It's also an iconic gift Pokemon because in the other Gen 5 games you are gifted a Larvesta egg, which is really neat and which evolves into Volcarona. I will say I hate how late Volcarona evolves, but that's a big Gen 5 problem. We won't talk about that here. It is a mistaken legendary. For the reason that I talked about, there's this kind of awesome dungeon beneath the desert, this desert ruin castle where you can find Volcarona as a static encounter, and it's kind of like we've discussed before Rotom. It was a mistaken legendary for that reason. I mean, it looks regal and epic and huge. It's so freaking awesome. And it's extremely strong as well. That iconic design, of course, kind of like the Volcarona really kind of has the sun god vibe going on. It's a fire and bug type. They managed to find a way to make a bug Pokemon really strong and cool looking, which I loved. It's obviously the ace of Champion Alder. Alder is the champion in the Black and White games, not in Black 2 and White 2, but his ace Pokemon is Volcarona, which goes very well with his big red hair. Love to see it. A featured boss Pokemon in New Pokemon Snap. So it's not just featured in New Pokemon Snap. There are several boss fights, boss encounters, we'll say, in those games, and Volcarona is one of them, and it's really cool. Now, in terms of forms, we're talking about the new Scarlet and Violet games. It is a team member of Sada and Turo in kind of the end game of those games because it gets a past and a future Paradox form. Both, I think, are really awesome. I'm going to pull both of them up here. So we have the past and the future. Let's get these about the same size here. Okay, so here we have Slitherwing, which is really awesome, and here we have Iron Moth, which is also really awesome. I think both are so cool. I love the solar panel vibe here on Iron Moth, but the thing I love about Slitherwing is that this is much more similar to Larvesta. So it's like if Larvesta stayed slithering on the ground, but became a ground Volcarona, even though it's a fighting type, not a ground type. But I love Slitherwing. I think it's so cool and a really interesting, different branch of Larvesta, you could argue. And again, Iron Moth is no slouch itself. I think the future paradoxes have really grown on me, and I think the fandom in general. I think we didn't like how they were just robot Pokemon, but when you dig deeper, I think they're a little more than that. It's very cool. This one's a poison type. So very neat. Slitherwing and Iron Moth, awesome points for Volcarona. And yeah, that's about it for Volcarona. Not an insanely huge resume, but I think a very, very meaningful one. That design, I think, is just so strong. And its boss encounters are plentiful and impactful. So that is why I decided to have Volcarona all the way up here at number 51. And then finally, we have reached the hallowed ground of the top 50. Again, this is where we're going to start to really see the elite of the elite. Not that the other Pokemon we've talked about are not elite, but this is kind of like the VIP room, the top 50. So I'm really excited about it. I'll give you our first entry as our last entry for this episode, and that is Metagross. Here, beginning the top 50, we have Metagross, and it is known primarily as being the ace Pokemon of Steven Stone, one of the great champions in Pokemon's history. It was Steven's ace in the original Ruby and Sapphire, as well as Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and don't forget, of course, it is his ace when he is a super boss in Pokemon Emerald, the game we have played. We love to see it. This design is so cool and so sick. It is a four-legged, just like alien robot thing. It's so awesome. Love Metagross so much. And it's like, it's the design of, it's like there's 4 Beldums on it. Beldum is just like 1 arm. Metang has 2 arms, and then it grows into 4 arms. It's a simple concept, but I think it's really neat. Love Metagross. Let's see here. What else was I going to say here? It gets a Mega Evolution, which this bad boy is so cool. And in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when Steven is reinstated as the champion, he uses Mega Metagross, of course, which we love to see. Let's see. It is featured on Molane's team in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which I think is really cool. Also featured on Elite Four, Amaris' team, in the DLC for Scarlet and Violet. Now, one great point for Metagross, I think, is it was the first pseudo-legendary that was not kind of like explicitly like a draconic monster Pokemon. Now, Salamence was a pseudo-legendary along with Metagross in Generation 3, but we also have Dragonite and Tyranitar. And Metagross is kind of like a big departure from that design philosophy, and something that I wish that they would do more with their pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Because although Tyranitar is not a dragon type, it's very much kind of like kaiju, lizardy, draconic-y looking, along with Dragonite and Salamence. But Metagross really kind of breaks that mold in a way that is refreshing. And again, I would like them to do that more. So I think that is a cool and interesting little point for Metagross here. Now, great rarity. It was only encounterable in its OG generation as a gift from Steven. He would gift you a Beldum. Of course, when we played through the Battle Frontier in Pokemon Emerald, we used a Metagross, which is awesome. It is a Smash Bros. Pokeball. It likes to use Earthquake as a Smash Bros. Pokeball. I love that. It has a Gold Star card, which is super sick. Oh, yeah. And here in the Gold Star version of Metagross, we get shiny Metagross. It's that silver and gold. You know I love that. Silver Cave, baby. Oh, gosh. I love this Gold Star. One of my favorites we've seen so far. There's also a nice new Metagross in the TCG here. I mean, there's a lot of them. But there was, like, that one's really nice from Deoxys. But there's a nice one there's one from Ancient Origins. Here it is, Temporal Forces. Where it's just Metagross just plowing snow and making snowballs. I think this is super cute. I love this Metagross card. And one of my, a really nice modern one for you. But really, when it comes to Metagross, It has maybe one of the greatest designs in the entire franchise. I don't think I am telling tales out of school when I say that. It is the ace Pokemon of one of the greatest champions in Steven Stone, and that's really what's doing the bulk of the heavy lifting and getting Metagross into our top 50. We are starting to get on the back third here of our list. I'm excited to wind down, and I'm excited to get to that very special top 10. We're getting there, folks. But anyway, that'll do it for our episode today. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about what brings me joy. So thank you for listening. Thank you for just giving me a space to do that. I appreciate that a lot. I guess I will say, just as kind of like a little sneaky plug, I am working on new Silver Cave music, so I want to talk about that because I was working on that a lot today. And I am hopeful that I will have that released in either late 25 or early 26. So I'm excited about that. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, Silver Cave Gaming, please do. If you don't follow me here on Twitch, where I'm talking to you right now live, go ahead and do that. That's free. They're both free. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. I really appreciate you all, like I said, once again, and I will see you all next time when we start to really dig into the beginnings of the top 50. So, have a great day. I'll see you again next time. Peace.